Welcome to Wharton Tech Talks and the next episode of our space series. My name is Emma Robinson, and today I am talking with Melissa Quinn, the new general manager of Seradata, which is a part of Slingshot Aerospace. Seradata is a leader in space data analytics, which is crucial for understanding and managing space missions, and Slingshot Aerospace tackles broader challenges including collision avoidance and long-term space usability. In our conversation today, we'll be exploring the broader aspects of the global space market, looking beyond just the US perspective, and what it takes to be successful in the industry. Hi, Melissa. So happy to have you on the podcast. Could you share with our listeners today where you're dialing in from?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm dialing in from the very far southwest of the United Kingdom in a place called Cornwall, which is very special, but my accent is not Cornish. I'm actually from Canada originally, so I've only called it home here for about 12, 13 years now.
12, 13 years is still a significant amount of time. Well, we're so happy to have you. You are our only international-based speaker in this tech space series thus far. But yeah, could you introduce yourself and your role at Slingshot Aerospace for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Melissa Quinn. I am the general manager of Seradata, which is a Slingshot Aerospace subsidiary here in the UK. And we're just in the process of integrating Seradata completely into Slingshot. So I get the joy and the pleasure of doing that. Slingshot Aerospace are an incredible company looking at space sustainability. And basically that means we are mainly a data company looking at lots of different types of data, from observational data to environmental data to contextual data from spacecraft operators. And we're fusing all that data together to give us a really amazing picture of what's going on in space so we can help avoid collisions and any sort of kind of negative or behavior in space that might mean that we can't use it in the future. So we want to keep space safe, secure, and sustainable for all of us going forward. It's an incredible mission-led company, and I've been part of the team now for only a few months. So it's been a steep learning curve for me, but I'm absolutely loving it. And it's just an incredible team to work with. I mean, we're talking like some of the top people in this whole industry I get to work alongside now. So it's such a privilege.
That's so exciting. Congrats on the new position. Something we hear so consistently in these space interviews is how just excited and mission-driven people are. Such a lovely difference compared to maybe some other industries. But who exactly are the primary clients that Slingshot and Seradata serve at the moment?
Pretty much everyone that you can imagine that works in the space industry at some point have come across either Seradata or Slingshot, from the US Space Force to UK Space Command over here to Australian Space Agency. So big agencies, as well as the big kind of aerospace and space primes, right down to academia and some of the best universities looking at space all across the world, actually. We've got a great list of clients that we, again, are so privileged to work for, not only because we can provide them with the solutions that they might need to use space more responsibly, but also because we learn a lot from them as well. And we're in a growing area of skill set and knowledge in space sustainability. And as much as we can do that together is so important. And well, it's crucial for helping us kind of protect it for the future. So we've got a creme de la creme list of customers.
That's awesome that you're operating all over the world. I think when we hear the words like safety and sustainability, we often think of the government and government customers and the influence of regulation. Is the government the majority of your clients that you serve in terms of revenue generation, or is it really more evenly split?
I think for anybody in this kind of field of space at the minute, it's definitely still government-led. They're the ones up there really starting to look at how we're going to protect it, secure it, and keep it safe. So definitely the government are leading in this area. However, saying that, there's definitely a commercial element to it that is growing. And the importance of space sustainability is for everybody. And I think there's now this kind of onus on commercial companies to start to get their act together too, and to take it more seriously and to be more transparent about how they're behaving in space, because we're all in it together. So we're definitely seeing a growing market in the commercial side of things for us, and that will continue to grow. But yes, definitely at the moment, it is government-led.
The commercial market, is this, you mentioned, is mostly the traditional primes. Are those the ones that take up the majority of your clients, or is there any like startups, or how do you interact with kind of the emerging space economy?
Every element of it. And there's a great new emerging kind of startup market around working with partners and partnerships around things like active debris removal, because that's part of the solution for what we're doing going forward as well. And there's some great on-orbit and in-orbit companies that are now starting to need the data and analysis that we have. And then, of course, there's the big ones. There's the big names out there that are the most active in space. So they need to understand what's happening and they need to be able to start to predict what might happen more accurately. Again, it's kind of exciting because we're in conversations with all those types of companies as well as government, and it keeps you agile, keeps you really on your front foot because they change quickly. The technology is changing so fast that we have to keep up with that too. So it's really exciting to be kind of in all those conversations.
Yeah, before delving a little bit more deeply into what Seradata and Slingshot do specifically, I'd love to hear more about what it's like to work with governments and industry across a variety of different countries and markets. I know that the acquisition of Seradata was part of an initiative, I think, to expand into Europe. I would just love to hear more about how you think these markets differ and what in key aspects like innovation and funding and regulation.
Yeah, I've got a lot of experience in this. My previous life before Slingshot was running a spaceport, which we were bringing the first launch to the UK, which entailed an American company, Virgin Orbit, bringing them across. So I got to know the inner workings of legislation, regulation, ITAR, politics, commercial, but how everything's run on both sides.
For our listeners, could you just explain what a spaceport is?
Oh, it's basically what it sounds like. It's a port to space. It's a launch site. It's where you launch spacecraft to space. And the UK, about 10 years ago, wanted to create one. I got to be the first head of a spaceport to do that in the UK. So it was very exciting.
Wow.
But yeah, lots of experience in that. And they are similar and different. Obviously, the US is the big one. And I've been doing it for so long that they have a definite way. They've got such a rich industry and incredible expertise and skill sets and a very kind of large, big thinking strategy from NASA to Space Force to all the big primes that are sat there to SpaceX. It's got all the heavy hitters are there. So that means that the regulations and legislation are kind of built around that. And the history and the heritage of it is incredible, but it's also led to where everything is now, even from the STEM side and the outreach and the inspiration that started back with Apollo. You see, that's why the US is where it is, really. And then in the UK, it's definitely smaller. The budgets are a lot smaller, but it's very ambitious in certain niche areas. It's a hot topic all the time. It's very much politically supported across all parties. And it's something that everybody's really proud of here in the UK, that we have this kind of niche ability in certain areas. And the legislation and regulation here, it takes what's happening in the US and it adds its own kind of version of it. The UK historically are known for our bureaucratic processes and our legal and insurance kind of prowess. We definitely do that. And sustainability is a big one here in the UK with space. And the King himself announced the Astra Carta earlier this year and really set the tone for the space industry as being a sustainable one and really considering how we're approaching space and not making the same mistakes that we have on Earth in space. So it's more from a sustainability side. Whereas I think in the US, you definitely see that more of that security and that safety element first on people's agendas, which obviously brings sustainability alongside. But the messaging is much more about sustainability here in the UK.
You mentioned an Astro Carta. What does that entail?
So an Astra Carta is a set of principles. The King has the Terra Carta, which is similar, but for Earth. So how are we as a country, as in private and commercial companies, as well as the government, going to set the principles for behaviors in those areas, from the kind of bigger picture stuff right down to supply chain? How are supply chain companies going to work together to ensure that we're responsibly and ethically using space? And he set a similar type of system of principles for how we're using our land in the UK. So it's following along with that. And it was quite impressive to see him really take notice of the industry and host a day where he came and talked to us about it. So he's very much involved in the space industry in the UK.
Interesting. Yeah, I love the name, the Space Carta as well. Were these jointly developed with other countries or with the industry, or do they get very granular? Do you think the impact of this kind of regulation is on cross-border cooperation?
He initially announced it at the Space Sustainability Summit, which is a global summit every year where people that work in the space sustainability fields come together. And so we hosted it in London last year, and he announced it then that that's what his intention was. So it definitely trickled through everybody that was there from across many different countries around the world. And it gets very granular in the UK. It was very much a charge on commercial industry in the UK to get their act together, work together, and to come and really handed it over to us to start to develop. So he set the kind of guiding principles, and now there's a group that's working on it. And it's in its first few months, and it's really going really well because you've got the right people doing it.
On issues like these, from a geopolitical standpoint, with our security concerns, cooperating with countries like Russia and China are perceived as incredibly difficult. How do you see countries like China, Russia being incorporated in these discussions?
I think it's going to be a challenge. I think even just getting all allied countries on the same page with a bit of a roadmap is tricky in itself. I think it all comes back to the data. If we're able to see and understand and predict how countries are behaving in space, it allows us to respond more effectively, earlier, more efficiently. So Slingshot, for instance, we were the first to identify what was going on with the Russian satellite recently when it started to maneuver and saddled up alongside another large spacecraft out in geo orbit. And being able to track that and to see it and to transparently show what's going on to the wider world, that's kind of starting to be a bit of a game-changing technology, because if we can transparently and almost unbiasedly show what's going on and how people are behaving, then we can respond and act. But then on the other side, we can also start to predict how they might behave in the future and plan accordingly to that. That's kind of the technology side. In the meantime, then yes, I mean, geopolitically, the UN pulling together groups to start to discuss how are we going to behave in space as humans, because everybody can be negatively impacted if one person does something wrong. We've kind of jointly have to come together, really. And things like when you see desatellite tests and all that, it's just really scary to know that they're putting even themselves at risk when they're doing any of these types of activities, or their own astronauts, for instance. As we send more and more humans into space, the potential collateral becomes a lot higher. So I think there's a long way to go, and it's going to take a lot of different people, but a lot of different sides, from technology to policy to public engagement to geopolitics, to get it together. But again, I think conversations there, and in the meantime, having that kind of data analysis and prediction of what might happen can help us avoid major collisions.
How would you characterize the US's role in this? On one side, my hypothesis would be that given the pace of innovation in the US, they'd want to be a leader in developing these principles and ways of going forward. But on the other side, the US is very focused on security and may not be as willing to share data as much as we would hope.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely leading because they have the ability to be the ones. And going back to the history of having that 50 years of innovation and technology and policy and politics behind it, it's of course going to be a major player in it. But I think the best thing that the US and the UK can do is really work together to kind of capitalize on our allies, to bring everybody together to start to plan how we're going to do this. And the UK is similar with spaceflight regulations, which I was involved with previously. They will take what's going on in the US, they'll work together with them, and they'll come up with a solution that mirrors what's happening with the other allied nations, but can be enacted in a way that responds to the industry and the different nuance in their own country. There's a big program coming out here called Borealis that's going to be creating SSA and SDA, so Space Situational Awareness, Space Domain Awareness platform. And that, of course, will be supported by what the US are doing, but the UK will be developing their own as well. Starting to have that kind of common operating platform system that everybody can kind of hook onto and share, I think is going to be a huge part of that solution. And the US have that kind of initial technology to start to drive that.
Interesting. It seems there's so many different regulatory challenges to overcome, but we've got a decently rosy view of hopefully being able to cooperate.
I'm always rosy. Maybe that's a negative thing, but I do believe it's the one thing that we've all got to figure. It's a major challenge. But if we don't do it, we're all hooped. It's kind of like good or bad, we've got to do it. So I do feel like that motivation, whether it's carrot or stick, we'll have to get there eventually. It's just if anything happens in the meantime while we're trying to figure it out.
No, I totally agree. I'm curious, from more of an innovation perspective, what do you think the strengths are of Europe in comparison to other sectors? You mentioned the UK excelling in more niche areas. What is the UK's and Europe's strength compared to the US?
I think what you see over here is a lot of kind of smaller, more agile companies that can take problems and come up with quick innovations. They're a bit scrappy, so they're a bit more like, we don't have the levels of funding, which means you can sometimes be a bit more innovative because you have to be a bit more creative with how you're using your budget. So there's some amazing, wicked little companies in Europe and the UK that are really getting traction because the pool isn't as big, so they get noticed and they get funded and the politicians like them and they tell a great story and their technology is actually very good. So you're starting to see some really great little champions coming out of the startup world over here, which is, again, really exciting. We do have the history of like building amazing small satellites over here. I think in the grander side of things with Europe and with the UK, that policy, that regulatory kind of heritage is starting to come into its own as well. And I think there's an area around insurance for space and legal side of space as well that we're starting to see really come out of Europe and the UK, which is exciting. And then we've got ESA here too, and they're doing some really cool stuff around the future astronauts and cislunar economy and Mars rovers. And there's a lot of really amazing things going on here. We just don't have quite the budget that's in the States, but I think what you see out of that is a bit more creativity.
Interesting. I love that characterization because a lot of people just, when they think of the space industry, they think of the US, but that's also, I'm referring to people who are already in the US and have not learned very much about the European market. And I never thought about Europe as leading the way on things regarding legal and insurance, but that's such an important way to sustain space in the future. But I'd love to hear more now about exactly the main objectives of Seradata within Slingshot Aerospace and what it's been like to take over helm at Seradata.
Yeah, Seradata is incredibly rich with contextual data. So the historic data of every single launch going back to Sputnik, launching and tracking every spacecraft, the detail of the spacecraft, if it's, has propulsion or thrusters on it, maneuverability. And then we go into the insurance side of things. So where is claims? What's the probability of risk? So insurance customers are one of our biggest markets because of that. We track what's going on with rocket bodies, re-entry, dockings. It's just a really amazing database. It's a subscription service and it's basically you log on, you can do your own queries. We've got an API coming onto it so people can pull it and put it into their own systems. And we've got my team are small, but we've got the OGs of some of the space world over here in the UK. Some of my team, 35 years of experience and knowledge in their heads of space and spacecraft, and that all goes into the database. And now we're starting to look at, okay, how can we get AI involved and machine learning to pull some of that initial data and where we can really then go and fill some of the other gaps that are out there about going back to what's going on in Russia, what are they launching and where is it? We provide that kind of base level data that then feeds into Slingshot's other products. And then what you're starting to see is that fusion of our data, Slingshot's data, the environmental side, and then now starting really incredible projects with some of the operators of spacecraft on orbit sensors. And that just providing this really, really end-to-end picture of space now.
There's a few things I want to follow up on that. It sounds like a lot of interesting, exciting things. But first of all, one thing we've not talked about at all on this series is the insurance side of things. So what you're doing is assessing, correct me if I'm wrong in this characterization, of course, but assessing the risk to a satellite and then helping the insurance companies figure out what to charge, or what is that?
We just provide them with the data so they can decide to them where their risk thresholds are. And we're providing them, say, if they're looking up a specific company that have asked to insure their next spacecraft, we can provide them with that company's history, failures, successful missions, if the failures happened, what part of it went wrong, if they had any other claims, the ownership to everything that they might want to try and see from a historic perspective that will help them then assess the risk going forward. It's a really interesting dynamic in space insurance because of the growth of these smaller spacecraft and a lot of them not wanting to get insured. It's like, I guess, when I'm doing talks to young people, I'm always like, imagine if you're driving on a road that has no speed limit and no lines on the road and everybody's blind and you don't have insurance. Like, that's what we're doing in space at the minute. For us to try and help the insurers then go and make space more responsible in the future is definitely part of the role of space sustainability, is how you effectively use insurance.
Are there that many companies out there right now willing to provide insurance for space? It sounds like a massive risk.
I mean, there are. It's definitely peaks and troughs for them, but most of the insurance companies involved in space it's just a small part of their overall kind of insurance business. Some are doing well. It's not been a great year. It's been the biggest year of claims I think we've seen is this year. We're just kind of tallying that up. I think there's some major losses this year that we will probably see some companies exit the industry.
Is that unusual? I mean, the number of objects in space is also increasing exponentially.
Yeah, none of the failures have happened because of a collision. They've happened for other reasons. But yeah, the claims is the most that we've ever seen.
Wow, interesting. You mentioned earlier that you were trying to integrate more AI, machine learning to fill gaps in the industry. Could you elaborate on that? What areas is Seradata trying to innovate on?
For Seradata, as a database, it's just where can we automate some of the data entry for, let's say, for example, when Starlink's going constantly. I have an analyst that's basically full-time job is just doing SpaceX launches and Starlinks. If I could get that automated, then it will free him up to do some really cool other projects. So that's what we're working on the minute. Slingshot itself, I gave the example earlier of tracking Luch that was through AI, and we've got some really amazing machine learning products coming out next year too, which I'm sure you can see, which I won't jump the gun on that because I'll get told off massively, but it's just across the piece, looking at where we can start to bring in AI, where we can bring in machine learning to just make us more efficient. But then also I just free up capacity of some of these incredible humans to go and innovate and to go do the stuff that machines aren't doing yet.
That makes a lot of sense. How does Seradata interact with the other teams at Slingshot? Do they have like an idea for a project and they come to you and see if it's feasible with the data, or how does that relationship work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's across everything where I have two parts of my day. I have my UK day and then I have my US day and about now in the evening. And more so, I think we're just so complementary, and we're just about to release some new kind of product tiers for next year for our subscription service. And in that, we're bringing in some of the Slingshot capabilities into Seradata to just bring some visualizations, bring some of it to life, add a bit more kind of richness, especially to some of our maneuverability data. And then vice versa, we're supporting one of the products called Beacon and their other product called Vantage. We feed into that, and we will be doing more and more as we move towards kind of the advancements of some of the other products next year too. So it's more integrated even in the last month than it has been since I first started. So I'm really keen to just kind of line up the technology. And for us, I want to be that gateway into the wider Slingshot projects.
No, well, yeah, it takes a little while to integrate an acquisition into a company. And Seradata, I think, was acquired in 2022. Is there a lot of M&A happening in the space industry?
I think there will be more. I think it'll be the nature of what we start to see. Consolidation across all different kind of activities. The cliche of space is hard, but it's also very expensive. And I think with the economic environment going on, I think you're going to see more and more. We saw SPACs happen a few years ago that didn't necessarily go the way that everybody thought they might go. And as part of one of those, which was the downfall of Virgin Orbit, seeing how space business works, like space is hard, but space business side of it, actually running the space business side is really difficult. So I think if there's opportunities for people to partner or to acquire complementary businesses, if they can, I think we will see more and more of that.
Yeah, makes sense. For listeners, we'll have another episode coming up talking a little bit more about SPACs and what those mean. But for now, I'll leave that a secret.
Yes, please. PTSD for me. So.
Yeah, PTSD for the whole industry. But for the last bit of this podcast, I'd love to switch gears a little bit and just hear about your trajectory and how you got to the space sector, because I believe you don't have a technical background.
No, definitely not in space. I was a child of the 90s. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Canada. My dad flew airplanes and I absolutely loved them. And I, as a young little girl in rural Canada, I just didn't really have anybody telling me, other than my parents, that, yeah, you can do that. You can be an engineer. Here you go. Here's how you get there. And you had like these old guys coming in all kind of grubby saying, oh yeah, I fixed this and I fixed this. That was the only kind of sign of an engineer I ever had. So I've always kept that at the back of my head because it could have cut the time getting into the industry for me. But I've taken a bit of a different road in, which is great and a great example in itself. But I think it's really important that us in the industry can go in and tell young people, especially young women, young girls, like, yes, this is actually an engineer doesn't look like how you think. And this is their jobs and this is what they do on a day-to-day basis. And then here's the pathway into a career like this. And this is how you can be supported. So I think there's a responsibility of all of us in this industry to do that, to get out to, even if it's your local school or whatever. I'm so passionate about that because I never had that. And I wish that I did. I actually studied economics, but very niche. Aerospace economics was what I went into. So more the business side. And then I came to the UK and did my master's here, again, still in aerospace economics, and just further totally narrowed down any options I had in the future. But luckily, I was brought in as a consultant to help the airport down in Cornwall, which was owned by the military and was sold to local government to develop it, attract innovative technologies to use it. So I was working initially on unmanned systems, big drones basically on testing. So that got quite technical quite quickly. And I was busy doing nothing to do with space. And then the UK decided they wanted to create spaceports and we were shortlisted as a site. And that was in 2013. And I was instantly pulled onto that team. And I had a fast track crash course into launching to space over a few years. And then by January this year, we launched. So it was 10 years of nitty gritty launch world. And yes, the fact that I did not come from an astrophysics degree or even an aerospace engineering degree, but I work with them. And my role has always been to take that really technical environment and to translate that into how we can go and get funding, how we can get the right regulations in place, how I can facilitate business growth opportunity and to tell the story so we could raise the profile of what we're trying to achieve in our mission. So really, it's given me that kind of foundation to approach the space industry in a way that is from a different background, which I think the industry needs more of because unfortunately, the space industry is brilliant. It's exciting. I love it, but doesn't do a very good job of telling its story in a way that people understand. And you do see that played out in the media a lot. I think there's a lot of challenges facing this sector, and we need a more diverse background of people from all walks of life to help us try and solve those challenges because we haven't done it so far with the makeup we have of the industry right now. So for me, it's important that, again, we go out and we tell the story, but we also tell our own stories and encourage people to get involved with the industry and break down some of those stereotypes as well. It's so important.
Yeah, there's so many just stereotypes around just these sorts of industries in general and women getting involved in STEM fields without STEM backgrounds. It's so difficult. What key steps would you give as advice to someone looking to transition into the space industry who might have just an economics or a business or a non-aerospace consulting background?
I think take what you might think of the space industry and probably chuck it out the window because I think for a lot of people, they're so disconnected from space. They don't think it's for them. They think you have to be an astronaut or you have to be an astrophysicist to be in it. And you absolutely do not. And I think the biggest mistake we can make is saying space is its own separate industry. Space crosses absolutely everything we do nowadays, crosses agriculture, fishing, tourism, hospitality, arts, media. It crosses everything. So if you're passionate about space and the future and exploration or innovation and helping solve world problems, there will be an opportunity for you in this industry. Whether you're an artist, we need more artists to help us communicate what people see when they're in space. If you're a farmer, we need people to help us use driverless tractors to monitor and crop rotate more efficiently so we're not creating more climate problems. There's so many different ways you can get involved in this industry. And I think for me, my advice is always, what are you passionate about? And then how will you apply that to space? And then just reach out to people. It is a very friendly industry. We're still quite small. I know pretty much, I feel like I know everybody in it now. And I've only been in it for about 10 years, but it's friendly. Lots of people do work experience in all different jobs. Check out SpaceX's website and you'll see just the variety of jobs that they have, from everything from event production managers, communication people, right down to obviously the spacecraft engineers. You will see just within that how many different people they need.
Yeah, I love your characterization that people with any sort of passion or interest or background in different industries could find a way that space is involved. I think so many people just think of space as trying to like explore Mars or land on the moon. They're like, that's a waste of money. That's not helping society. But there's so many ways that space is helping across so many critical sectors, which is key to remember. My last question, I've been asking everybody on the series this, but are there any sectors, industries related to space outside of data analytics that you find really exciting?
Outside of space completely?
No, in space,
In space.
outside of Seradata.
Oh, I got you.
Slingshots.
Yeah, I mean, once you've worked in the launch industry, it gets under your skin. Rockets and blasting off to space is pretty much the pinnacle of working in the industry, and being part of a launch campaign is so exciting. But it totally takes over your whole life. You sacrifice everything to get to a launch. The launches slide constantly around. So you basically give up your life to launch, and it can go wrong, which mine did. So even 10 years of working in it and all that sacrifice, it can still not work. So that is the space industry, really, isn't it? It's incredible, but it still can go wrong. And there's beauty in that too. So launches definitely will always be under my skin because it's so exciting. And when in your life do you ever think that you're going to be part of sending something to space? And when you are part of that, it's incredible. So yeah, launch.
Yeah, I was an intern with Starfish Space this summer.
Oh, yeah.
And they launched Otter, which has now faced trouble, but it was such an exciting time. But yeah, well, thank you, Melissa, so much for coming on the podcast. It was great talking to you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, if anybody's interested in coming over to the UK, we could use some people. So there's my other advice. Look abroad.
There's a lot of people who would love to go abroad, so I'll spread that message. But yeah, thank you so much.
Cheers. Thanks, Emma.